Do you always try to finish the act with an extra strong routine, like the names of single bars? You kind of build to a big finish. Is it?
That was I stuck that in because I had 2 minutes left on that show. Normally, for years and years, I've ended my show with the long list of impolite words. It's around 450 words, and I read it with a sort of a verbal ballet. I give it a lot of style and stuff, and I only need the paper a little bit. So usually I finish with that, kind of a tour de force of dirty language.
Those are the dirty words?
Yes, yeah. I call it the incomplete list of impolite words. But now lately I've been just doing selected portions of them because I finish on a thing that I call the rant, where I express a lot of anger and dissatisfaction about certain things in society. I do like to finish on an up, emotional, large note of some kind.
You mentioned before, what's the total number of hours that you've written material?
Well, I have 7.5 hours of HBO show under my belt. So that's 7.5 hours different. I probably have another 3.5 hours that never got on.
Okay, so if you needed to, you could do 11 hours
right.
in a row. When you're booked to do a concert,
Yeah.
what is the criteria for choosing the specific material to do?
Well, I do a standard show, which is that year's show, and which will, after 18 months or a little more, become the next HBO show. This past time, I did about an hour. I did 55 minutes. Okay. I put out that HBO show. I put out an album of 45 minutes based on that stuff, leaving out 10 minutes here and there. And then I begin to drop that stuff from my act. I don't drop it all at once. It's impossible to put the next 45 minutes or hour.
But all the time during that 18-month period, you are working on new stuff.
Right. Right now, I have only in my act, out of that hour, about 25 minutes of it left. But I'm doing an hour and a half, so that means I have about an hour new. At some point next November, I'll just do an hour for HBO, and then I'll begin to drop that and start putting in new stuff.
Very often when you deliver a joke, you add facial expressions or a gesture or sometimes change your voice. How do these techniques help to stimulate the audience reaction?
Well, they just intensify the message. You know, the thing you're going to say that you want them to react to has a palpable reality to it. It's a thought. You know, well, it's not quite palpable really, but it has it has an existence. It's a thought and a contrast. You're trying to exchange from your mind to their mind, and sometimes you just assist the passage of the thought by even a subtle thing that you do with your body. It's all just. It's like in support of the idea. Those are physical manifestations of an abstract thing. The idea is abstract, but here's something physical to give it some form, to give it some life for you. And there's emotion transferred that way. The other thing is just a thought. It's just intellectual. But the body gives it emotion, gives it feeling, and that adds to their experience.
So that would be a description of the importance of body language.
Yes.
And in the success of performing comedy
Absolutely.
material.
Yes. It's an augmentation of the idea.
Do you sometimes choreograph your movements to correspond with certain jokes?
There are some jokes, there are some passages in material, put it that way. There are some short passages in a piece that I've found through trial and error are enhanced by a given body attitude or series of gestures. But that's experience that gives me that.
You remember Danny Kaye when he'd Dina, you could go see him 1,000 times. Dina, it was the same gesture, the same movement over and over.
Well, over a period of a year and a half or 2 years or even more, when something just stays in my act for a long time, a piece of choreography will become quite as much a part of it as the words.
There's some critics who believe that you're a spokesman for every man in the United States, in that you make highly intelligent observations about our society, its customs and mores. You put them under a microscope and with comedic technique make them very funny. Is it your intent to make people think as well as laugh?
Well, it must be. I don't know. Yes, I like. No, I'm going to turn it around. It's more like this. I want them to laugh. I want them to be pleased with me. That means if they laugh at me, they'll be pleased with me. But the second thing that I seem to want is their respect for my mind. And that is the flip side of making them think, showing them that I can think. I think that has to do with some deep-seated feeling of inferiority at not finishing my education, because I know I got a good mind, and I knew it then when I left school. And it's this, it's this story you get in society, and we believe it, that, well, he had a good mind, but he didn't use it. You know, you have a good mind, George, you're not using it. And we begin to believe that shit, because we're blank slates, basically, inside. So I think I have a need to show my intellect and to show it off and to say, look, see, like I didn't finish school and I didn't go to college, but look at what I can do with my mind. I think that's in there. Although consciously I don't walk around
It's an
with
underlying thing.
It has to be a fuel to this thing.
George, when you use certain words like pussy, bullshit, fuck, asshole, cocksucker, they seem to evoke a big laugh, no question. Would the joke work just as well if the shock word wasn't included?
Some do, some absolutely do not. It has to do with the importance that that word plays in that particular context you're in. I have no way of giving examples of this, but it seems as if there are some contexts you can be speaking in where the joke is supreme and will win out over anything. And there are other contexts where the emotion, because those words are emotional and they provide, as you say, shock, and I want to say something about that in a minute too, but where emotion is involved in the message, more than intellect or in equal parts, those words serve a better purpose, and they seem more indispensable in a given joke. There are some where the laugh will be a little bit less, but the joke still survives. Well, I want to say that thing about that word shock, because as you and I know, over the years, and especially since Lenny Bruce, that word shock has become a bit of a conversational cliche when discussing that kind of comedy, where people will say, well, now aren't you just doing that for the shock value? Well, what those people don't realize is that comedy feeds on surprise. The whole element of comedy deals with surprising the person at the end. Shock is nothing but an intensified form of surprise. Now, if you're just standing up there to shock alone, there are things you can say that are much more shocking. You can start screaming things about baby rape and describe baby rape in a graphic way. That's shocking. These words serve, yes, as a heightened surprise. Therefore, they're on the edge of shock, but they are not for shock value. They are for embellishment. Not everyone in this society speaks that way, but a large percentage of people in this society use those words the same way in private life, to make an emphatic point. So
what was your reaction to Cosby getting after Eddie Murphy and then Jay Leno? Because Eddie uses so much of that in his act.
And there are degrees of use, and there are contexts, and I just think everything goes. I have a piece in my act where I talk about cancer now, where I begin to talk about cancer. I take a sip of water and I talk about the carcinogens in the water, and I talk all about the cancer, and I get a few pretty good laughs in it, and then I have some lines where they don't laugh at all. And then I say to them, see, some people don't want you to talk about certain things. They're afraid if you don't say something, it'll go away. And then I say rape, because you can talk about rape, and I do a whole long thing on rape, and it's funny as hell. And I just am trying to show them that depending on the context of the joke, how you use it, what your intention is, the words can serve a different purpose than just to hurt people. And so, what am I getting back to? Yeah, I think anything goes. And I think of Eddie Murphy, who is still young and unformed as a stand-up. I mean, he came out of sketch playing into comedy, acting in movies, and his stand-up thing is raw still and unformed. He'll learn how he wants to temper it if he wants to, but it'll be his experience. Cosby can say what he wants, of course, but I think it's really prudish to come on like that. I think it's wonderful that Jay Leno never has to use a dirty word and everything, but I don't choose to do that, and I don't,
And each man has to do his own thing.
Absolutely, and I think imposing, even conversationally, imposing your own standards on someone else by pointing it out is unnecessary, and small-minded, I think.